Hello fellow makeup lovers, how are you guys doing today? I am so happy because we are going to be testing out the new Menagerie Cosmetics x Annette's Makeup Corner Serenity Palette. I was so excited when this was sneak peeked forever ago. I just knew in my gut that it was going to be Annette when it was announced, when we got to see the shades, and I'm just so happy that it is now finally here and in my hands. So if you have not seen what this palette looks like on the inside, here is the color story. So pretty. I honestly was kind of taken aback by this shade right here called Chrysalis. When I saw it in person, it is probably one of the prettiest like deep purple shades I've ever seen, but overall there's just a really beautiful, interesting mixture of mattes and shimmers. And although it is a little bit more rainbow-esque, I feel like it has like pops of pastel, has like a little bit of grunginess to it, so it does feel like an inspiring color story to me. But I do just want to let you know, I view Annette as a friend, so there is some level of bias there. I'm gonna give you my honest opinions as much as possible, but I just like to go ahead and put that in the very beginning. Today we're basically just gonna go ahead, we're gonna do swatches, which I'm very excited for because Annette said that these are like the best shimmers Menagerie has done yet, and I'm excited to test that out. We're also gonna do an eye look, and then I have almost every single palette Menagerie has done, so I thought we could go ahead and compare each palette and swatch any shades that are similar because I think that'll be helpful for y'all, and I'm honestly curious to do that. So I know the title of this video is going to be basically like, is this palette worth fighting for? And I'm not being shady or anything. It's just that I saw so many comments like I'm gonna fight for that palette or I'm not gonna fight for that palette when it came to discussing this in indie makeup releases because it was launched with a very, very limited stock. I just want to give you all my honest opinion on if this palette is worth fighting for. I also know Menagerie mentioned that they were canceling all their international orders because there's an issue with packages getting through customs. I feel really, really sad for any international customers. I honestly just hope that situation is able to be taken care of and the customers who ordered this palette are able to get it. So the very first shade here is called Tranquil, and this is like a kind of flaky, semi-sheer light blue. Texture kind of reminds me of the shadow from the Pastel Pup palette. I can't remember what they called that formula, but they had Snowball in the Pastel Pup palette, and there was a few others that were released as singles. That's kind of what it reminds me of. And then next we have the shade Fluttery, which looks like a really beautiful hot pink shade. We've got Metamorphosis, which looks like a really beautiful like periwinkle matte shade. And am I the only one who is singing Hilary Duff in their head right now? Because I can't help it every time I hear the word Metamorphosis. So here's the first three shades. Oops. Okay, I feel like that's swatching a little bit more sheer than I expected, which sometimes happens with Menagerie's mattes, and then they're ridiculous on the eyes. So I'm just gonna go ahead and do a little second coat there, but I love those three shades together. All right, next we have the shade Evolution, which looks like a really beautiful, bright green. I feel like it almost has like a little bit of a golden shift to it, but it's definitely super pretty. I feel like that one felt like the metallic formula from the Flight Club palette, where it's definitely smoother than their other palettes, but it's still a little bit more of a chunky shimmer. And then we have the shade Anew, I think, which looks like a really pretty kind of just like very true purple. It's not pulling blue, not pulling pink, very, very bright. We have Monarch, which is a really intense orange. That one, again, it feels like creamy but flaky at the same time. Ooh, that's so pretty. Okay. Next we have the shade Sunbeam, which is a yellow shimmer. As you can see, that one is probably the flakiest one yet. We've got Imago, which is a bright blue. I feel like that one is a very, very primary blue as well. And then we have the shade Chrysalis, which I mentioned, which looks so, so pretty. That one actually looks like a duochrome. It has like a kind of like plummy berry base with a super bright like pinky purple shift, and it's just so cute. I don't know what it is about the tone of that color that's just really getting to me. That yellow was very flaky. I wasn't expecting that, but that shade though. And then last but not least, we have the shade Morpho, which is a really beautiful blue. Annette used this in so many of her looks and her 10 looks in one video for this palette, and it was just so, so pretty. Then we have the shade Cocoon, which is like a little bit more of a grungy green matte. And then we have Luna, that is a pretty bright kind of like lime green. Okay. Oh, that one looks completely different in texture. Like it's not flaky at all. It's a little bit more like satiny, but it has like a sparkle through it. I don't know if you can see that there. I was not expecting that. Okay. So it feels like there's like quite a bit of different textures going on between the different shimmers, because like I said, this one's very sheer. I would say the green, the orange, and the pink feel similar, but the pink is extra creamy, and then the yellow's flaky, and then this blue one is more like satin with a sparkle through it. So I'm very excited to get this on the eyes. Okay, so my arm looks okay, but do you see my fingers right now? Like, y'all don't even want to know what Teresa's Dead would say about me. Okay, so I already primed my eyes with the Anastasia eye primer, and I think I decided what I'm going to do today. I'm going to use as many colors as possible, but I think I'm going to stick more in like the pink, purple, blue realm of things. I'm going to start with the shade Metamorphosis. I'm just going to take that on a kind of medium crease brush, and I'm going to throw that through my entire crease. Start lightly buffing it out. Going in with a little bit more, just building that up. Then once I kind of get the crease as intense as I want it, I'm going to take whatever's left over on the brush and start going upwards. Okay, actually I'm going with one more layer just because I want this to be a little bit higher up. I mean, if we're going to go all in, we may as well go all in. Especially just in honor of Annette, because I feel like she does so many beautiful, super colorful, unique looks, and she's always pretty much using up all of her lid space to do the most. So I feel like I need to too. Okay, that looks really pretty, all built up and everything. I feel like I am going back and forth into the palette more than I normally would with a Menagerie palette, but it is building up really nicely and it's blending nicely, so honestly, no complaints. I feel like Menagerie's kind of perfected their formula to where it's pigmented, but you also don't get a ton of fallout or a ton of kick up. I think I'm gonna take this blue next. I'm trying to like decide how to use as many colors as possible, so I'm gonna start that off on my outer V and just lightly buff that out, but I'm also gonna throw that on my inner corner and do the same thing, or like the inner third of my lid, I guess I should say, because not fully my inner corner. Just lightly kind of adding a little bit more of that pop of bright blue. I feel like those two shades are blending together really pretty, and if you just took the shade Tranquil and put that on the middle of the lid and then on the inner corner, I think that would be a really quick but still colorful look. I mean, honestly, anything you do with this palette is gonna be very colorful. And we're gonna deepen it up even further, going into this shade right here called Anew. Just putting that right on the outer V and right on the inner corner. Kind of giving me like watercolor vibes right now. I honestly feel super torn right now because I love the way the crease looks right now so much. Like, it's very ethereal. And I don't even know if I want to go with the shades I was originally going to do because it's a lot more like grungy. I'm just sitting here groveling over this decision of what to do, and I think I'm just going to follow my heart. I will do a 3 looks video with this palette very, very soon. So you'll get to see the rest of the shades in action and whatnot, but today I just want to like go with what is pulling to me. So I'm going to take the shade Morpho and I'm going to throw that along the lower lash line, just using a pencil brush. Just super, super pretty. Looks so sparkly on the eyes. Like, that's kind of funny because it looks just amazingly metallic, and when I swatched it, it did not. I'm gonna go ahead and grab Tranquil on that same exact pencil brush, which I just wiped off, and just popping that on the inner corner. I don't know if you can tell, but you can definitely see it's like a little bit more on the sheer side. It just like looks like an iridescent blue. I'm gonna grab the shade Metamorphosis again, And I think I might even just use my finger just to tap that all over the lid as a base. It does not have to be perfect at all. I just want to add a little bit of color underneath. Okay, now I am picking up Tranquil on my brush. Let's see. Kind of just trying to pop this on the center of the lid. Definitely looks very cute. I think that looks really pretty, very soft, very ethereal, but just because I'm curious, I'm gonna pick up some more. I'm gonna spray my brush and just pop that on the center. Okay, yeah, that gives like a little bit more of like a wet look to it. I'm gonna finish this off with the Colourpop Creme Gel Liner in the shade Prance. Just throwing that in my waterline because I feel like that perfectly matches what's going on the lid. I'm gonna use the We Makeup More mascara and I'll be right back. So to finish off my face really quickly, I'm gonna go into the Moon Prism blush palette from Lunar Beauty, and I'm gonna take the shade Pink Moon right here, this really beautiful light cool toned shade, just because I feel like my eyes are very, very cool toned. Definitely don't want anything warm on my cheeks today. Now I'm using the Ofra Pillow Talk highlighter just because it's my favorite pink highlighter. And I'm just gonna throw that on the tops of my cheekbones, nose, chin. This is probably gonna be unexpected, but in honor of Annette, I thought I would go ahead and do a colorful lip with my colorful eyes. So I pulled out the Lisa Eldridge lipstick in the shade Velvet Beauty. Alright, so this is the finished look, and I honestly love how it turned out. I feel like these colors are so pretty, and it's just such an ethereal pastel moment that I was not expecting to get out of this palette. So I really like it. I cannot wait to play with the palette again. I feel like the color story is so beautiful. So huge congratulations to Annette. When I look at this palette, I get so inspired by the greens and the blues together, or the blues and the pinks, the purples and the pinks, the purples and the blues. And these like warmer shimmers right here with the pink are giving me a moment as well. So from first impression, it seems really well done. The shimmers, I feel like are kind of a little bit all over the place, like with some of them being more flaky and whatnot. I feel like I need to use those on the eyes before I can give you my full opinion. That's more on the buildable side, but they blended really nicely. So that's basically my first impression thoughts. Now let's go ahead and do some comparisons of this to the other Menagerie palettes. Okay, so first we have the Dragon Child palette, which is when Menagerie was still Makeup Monster Cosmetics. And here is what they look like next to one another. So I feel like there's almost like a very similar vibe in these two palettes, between like the little pops of grunge, pops of pastel, but it doesn't seem like anything is actually all that close. Like all the undertones look quite different. I feel like I need another hand, but Imago right here, I think I kind of want to compare to this shade right here called Dragon Rider, but I think that's about it between these two. So here is Imago, and here is Dragon Rider. Next we have the Feral palette from Menagerie. Here is what they look like next to one another. So there are two different shades in here that I want to compare. I'm going to do Huchera next to Evolution, and then I believe Ivy next to Cocoon, because those look a little bit similar. Here's Huchera. And here's Evolution. So those two are quite close. Is Ivy, and here's Cocoon. So those two are really similar as well. Next we have the Whale Song palette. Here is what they look like next to one another. So between these two palettes, I feel like I really want to compare the metallic blues, the shade Morpho and Whale Song, just to see them next to one another, although Whale Song does look a little bit more greeny. And I also want to compare Imago next to Dive, because I feel like those look similar, but overall I think that the Whale Song and like the deepening shades in here, the blue, the deep blue and the deep green, would be really pretty with the Serenity palette. Here is Whale Song, or sorry, that's Morpho, sorry. And here is Whale Song. So yeah, definitely quite a bit different. And then I think I'm just gonna go ahead and I'm not gonna swatch Imago again because it's literally right there. So I'm gonna grab Dive, which is super pigmented, and I'm just gonna put that on top right here. Okay, next we have the Colourpop palette, and honestly, between these two, there's really nothing similar. Definitely very, very different palettes. Okay, next we have the Flight Club palette, and between these two, the only thing that looks kind of similar is the shade After Dark to the shade Chrysalis. Okay, so these are very similar in a way. They're both kind of duochrome in the same family, but Chrysalis definitely has more of like a pink shift to it. So there is After Dark, and here is Chrysalis. Chrysalis definitely looks much more bright and poignant. We have the Violet Ink palette, which is no longer available from Menagerie, but it has a bunch of purples, so I just wanted to compare. Here's what they look like next to one another. I think I'm going to swatch this shade right here called Violet next to the shade Anew. All right, here's Violet, and here's Anew. So not exactly the same. Anew has just a little bit less blue to it. So between all the comparisons, there's definitely a few shades that are similar, especially I would say the Feral palette is the closest with those two greens, but if you have a bunch of palettes from Menagerie, I don't feel like a lot is repeating here. In fact, I'm kind of surprised that I didn't really have anything to compare with, like, oh wait, no, I missed a palette. I missed a palette. I also need to do Pastel Pup, which I pulled out before to mention the one Shimmer Shadow, and I completely forgot. Here is what Pastel Pup looks like next to the Feral palette, and there's definitely a few things I want to compare. I would say Ice Cap and Metamorphosis, although I feel like Metamorphosis is more pigmented, so let's just do those first. The Pastel Pup palette for me constantly gets hard pan. So I can already say like the Metamorphosis feels a lot better, but this shade looks pretty much the same if you can get over how green my fingers are. So here's Ice Cap and here's Metamorphosis. So Ice Cap is looking way less pigmented, swatched out, which is kind of just what it does. But I think if you build them up on the eyes, they would be very similar. I also wanted to compare the shade Tranquil to the shade Snowball, although Snowball has more of a purple shift to it. Okay, those two definitely look very similar. So here is Tranquil, and here's Snowball. So Snowball, you can see, is a little bit brighter and has a little bit more of a purple shift to it. And then Tranquil is just a little bit lighter, a little bit more sheer. So I guess looking through this, if you own every single Menagerie palette, there's definitely some very similar shades. Not perfect dupes for all of them, but definitely something to keep in mind. All right, y'all, I think I'm gonna need to like go take a shower to take care of this entire mess right here because I'm gonna need to exfoliate. But I really hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that it was helpful for you. Let me know, do you wanna see 3 looks with this palette? Because I really wanna do it. If you're not already subscribed to my channel and you wanna see more indie makeup content, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.